Hello, welcome to the TI-Nspire Navigator 101 session. My name is Cory Boby. I'm a math teacher from Hot Springs, Arkansas. I teach calculus, trig, and I teach that fourth year class that nobody knows what they want to call it. We call it Transition to College Math, but we're going to change it to something else next year, and we're not sure what the name is yet. But I basically teach all seniors at all levels, from the calculus down to the kids who are just barely going to graduate. And so we're going to take you through the Navigator today as a teacher. If you've been in a Navigator session, you've probably been a student. And my frustration when I was in those sessions like you were earlier was that I never got to drive. I wanted to see what I would have to do in the classroom as a teacher. So that's what we're going to do today. Okay? And before we get into that, I'm going to let my co-presenters introduce themselves.
I'm Randy Lobe, and I teach at a high school in Lacey, Washington, which is 60 miles south of Seattle. And I teach pre-calculus and Algebra 2 this year, but we trade around. Last year I had AP Calc and the pre-algebra type class at the high school, and I used it in all those classes. And we've been doing this together for a long time, Cory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually, this session started as a couple years ago. Randy and I were, both thought we were so smart. We thought we would do a session like this. And I did this, I thought, oh, I'm great. I'm going to do this and everybody's going to love it. People are going to come. And so I came in, I did my session in the conference in a computer lab, just kind of like this. And everybody was happy and everybody learned. And then it was over. And I said, all right, thank you very much. It was wonderful to see you. Have a great day.
And I'm standing outside waiting for
he's waiting to come
out.
in. Nobody left. Nobody got up. I'm like, it's over. Go away. And they're like, no, because the next session was almost exactly the same title with almost exactly the same description. And Randy came in and did the same kind of thing. And then we just, by fate or luck, decided to start working together because of that. And now it's turned into this where you're actually going to get some professional development within the conference.
It's about the fifth year doing it together.
Yeah, I think it's about the fifth year. And then the third presenter is my lovely wife, even though she's smart enough not to take my last name.
I'm Tracy Watson, and I'm a math instructor at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I teach math classes, I run a tutoring lab, I coordinate developmental math, I do whatever I'm told, that kind of job.
Your mic's not on.
I don't think your mic's on.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a lot of different roles, but one of my roles that any technology related stuff comes to me, and so, I mean, I love the technology. When I first saw Navigator, I saw the power that it could have in the classroom. So when I first got my hands on it, I got to tell the story of my very first use. I was so gung-ho and excited, got all this stuff prepared, got it out of the box, and 3 days later I was using it in my classroom. And I tried to do too much, first of all, but it was so incredible the difference that it made in my class. I had a class that there was problems with the relationship between the students and me. They just didn't seem like they were ever awake. It was a 9 o'clock class. I brought donuts, cookies, milk. I just couldn't get the interaction with the students. But bringing that in to the classroom actually started helping the community, them talking to me, you know, this connection through the calculator. So the power that it can do in your classroom, just at the relationship with students, I saw immediately. And then everything else just kind of came as we went. And actually, I think I had it used it one day in class, and the next day I left for a conference and presented on what happened my first day. It was kind of like this whirlwind of starting. But I'm convinced that this is something that we need in every classroom, to get that connection with every single student in our room. So I'm kind of raining on their party here because they've been doing this together for a couple of years. So I'm going to probably be in the back more sidekick.
Okay.
That's all right.
Okay, so in your classroom, you will have an access point connected to your computer, and you will have connection to 30 calculators. And every kid will be logged in, and you'll be doing this wirelessly, okay? We can't have whatever there are 20 full Navigator systems running in this room simultaneously just because of all the equipment. So what we're going to do is practice and make up a phony little classroom, and your classroom is going to consist of you as a teacher at the computer, and instead of connecting calculators wirelessly, this big box of black cables that you have somewhere hidden in a closet somewhere, this is one of the reasons you have it. You're able to connect your calculator to your computer with this, and when you do that, that's why you should have 2 calculators and 2 cables, and you will connect them to your computer, and these will be 2 students in your little mini classroom. When you're on the computer, you will be the teacher. When you're on the handheld, you will be the student. Now, some of you are paired up, and that's great. You can trade off roles. I want you to do that. Don't let somebody be the teacher and you just be the student, because that's not the point. Okay, trade off that role if you're sharing a computer. And if you are at a computer all by yourself, you just have to go back and forth and play both roles. Okay? Yeah, I want you to take your calculators and your 2 cables, and I have my new friend Jane from Georgia is our driver up here. Jane and I were just getting acquainted a little while ago, and she's going to be freeing me up from doing the computer. So Jane, go ahead and assemble your navigator while the rest of you do the same thing as well. You're going to plug the mini USB into the top of the calculator, and then should be, hopefully you have at least 2 available USB ports that you can connect to your calculator. If you want to put, a calculator on either side of the computer or both on one side, however you're comfortable, just remember, you're going to be possibly playing both roles, okay? So first things first, you need to find and open your Nspire Navigator software. Now, Jane, yours is already open at the bottom. It may not look like this because Jane's on a different screen than you might be on. Now, I think it takes them to class. If it's the first time you open it, there's a pop-up that'll say, did they get the, you don't have a class started?
You're all good.
You're all good? Okay. Well, we're going to start from scratch as if you didn't have anything on your computer. This computer that Jane is using is one of the workshop loan computers, and it's already active and already prepared and stuff. But if you notice, I want you to notice something down here in the lower left. Does it say 2 clients connected? Okay. 2 clients connected. What is that? Those are the 2 calculators. I don't know why. That's such a cold, hard language, but it's, that means how many calculators are talking to the computer. Now, that may fluctuate based on how many calculators are active. Like when your calculator turns off or goes into suspend mode, it's not connected to your computer at that time. So, but when you're using it in your classroom and if you do have issues, you want to check there. That'll tell you how many calculators you got going. Okay? So first things first, before we get into the fun stuff of Navigator, you've got to do some logistics. You do this once on the very first day of the year. Okay? Notice up here, there's content, class, documents, review, and portfolio. I'm on the documents tab. You might be, depending on if you've ever opened the software before or not, on, I believe, content. They're on the content tab. I'd like all of us to go and click on the class tab. Now, Jane has a class established because she's using the workshop loan computer. Okay, you may not. Now I know Sarah. Is it Sarah? Sarah, you have a class established because you're using my computer, and depending on where you are, you may or may not. But if you don't, I want to start and all of us make a new class, because what you have to do is you have to organize your students into groups, and the most logical choice is classes. So I'd like you to add a class. Now in Navigator, 3 heads mean the entire class. And 1 head means an individual action to an individual student. I could send something to just one person. I could send one thing to just Randy and not to Tracy, okay? Or I could send it to certain individuals. So click on the Add the Class icon. And this is in the packet. At the beginning of the packet, there's some stuff about setting up the hardware and setting up the stuff out of the box. We included that for those of you who have a system and who don't use it all the time or just getting new to it, you can read through that through the setup or go to the help to get that taken care of. But we're going to pick up, I think it's like on the third page, it says add classes. It's on the back if you want to follow along. I'm not a read to the read from the packet kind of presenter. If you want that kind of presenter, there's probably one somewhere else, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Okay? So when you click on the add classes, there's two methods of adding a class. You can do it manually, or you can upload from a CSV file. Now, I always do manually because I'm actually kind of lazy. I'm going to tell you why how I do it here in a second, why I'm using this as lazy. The CSV file, that would be if you can pull your names out of a grade book online. You can export the names of your kids. You can export them into a spreadsheet and upload them to Navigator. Okay? What's the problem with doing that? Is there a problem with pulling the roster down from your grade book and uploading it?
Changes every semester.
It changes every semester. Kids use nicknames. I had one of my very first years. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, but I moved and I've been in Arkansas since 1996. And coming from Pennsylvania to Arkansas, kind of a change. Anyway, one of my first classes, I had a Richard, and I'm calling roll, and I had Richard, and I said, Richard, and he goes, call me Billy Bob. I almost laughed right in that boy's face, all right? Billy Bob was a smart young man, but he was as redneck as they could be, okay? He was a nice young man, very polite, but he wore cowboy boots every day, and the second he went outside, he had his cowboy hat on, okay? He was Billy Bob, all right? So the nicknames, right? So I actually don't even want to deal with that because of that for one reason. So the directions for how to upload from your spreadsheet, if you do want to do that, that's fine. But I actually like the customization, and we'll walk through it. So hit next.
I have a question.
Yes, Jane.
If you do upload from a spreadsheet, are you able to change the names, like rename the characters?
You can revise them, but
you kind of have to tweak that CSV file a little bit because the column headings have to match the actual fields that they go into when you add a student, so you have to adjust that a little bit.
you do have to do a little
Throw out
advanced
all the
planning.
extra stuff.
Not anymore.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
is that
One of the changes.
Ooh, I
Oh,
missed
they
that.
fixed that,
Thank
yeah.
They
you.
fixed it. So.
Oh, good.
Well, see,
But
now that's
you
why
have
you're
to
here,
go
Tracy.
through
Yes.
and-
Okay, so let's choose next.
Now, at this point, though, just so you know, as you're going through this, if you would have chosen the CSV file, the steps through here are slightly adjusted because it takes you through a step to upload that file. Okay? So, but we're doing the manual one right here.
So if you're like me, I'm on a 7-period day, so I have 6 periods, right? I have period 1, period 2, period 3, blah, blah, blah. If you're on a block schedule, you might have 3 classes, whatever you have, 8 period. So here, I will create my classes when I get my assignment, or whenever, like before the first day of school, as I'm getting my classroom ready. So I would go in here and say period 1. And then, so type that in for me, Jane. And if you'd prefer to use Algebra 1, if you're an Algebra 1 teacher, you could have Algebra 1 Section 1, Algebra 1 Section 2 if you wanted to. I don't use sections, I just give it a name. And I name them by periods, okay? Because I'm a numerical guy. I don't know your names. If you tell me your phone number, I'll remember it, but I won't remember your names. Right. So click Add. There you go.
There you go.
And you could add a second period, period 2. And then hit Add. And now we go on and make all 6 of my classes. You just make 2. That's fine. Okay? And then hit Next. Oop.
There it goes.
Okay. So I have added my classes. You need 3 things to have school, don't you? What are 3 things do you really need to have school? Tracy hates this joke, this analogy. You need to have a classroom.
Right.
You need to have students, and you need to have a teacher. You just created the classroom. Okay? This is and she's back there smirking at me. Okay? I don't care. I got the floor. You have to listen to me, Tracy. That's why I love presenting. It's the only time Tracy has to listen to me. Okay? All right. So we can add students right now, or we can hit finish. Okay? So let's go ahead and add students right now. But if I didn't have the kids sitting in front of me, I would just hit finish. But go ahead. Now, this is the screen that is up on day one. This is how I handle it and why I do it and why I told you I'm lazy. I don't ever do anything that my kids can do for me. Okay? I don't have to make copies because I have a teacher's aide who works for me with me during my conference period, and during 7th period, Sam goes and makes copies for me. Okay? Don't do anything that your students can do for you. All right? So what I'm going to do on the very first day of school, my roster online might be off a little bit, or I might, not have the right names in it. So what I'm going to do is have this up, and as the first kid comes in, I pull them up to my computer and make them type in their first name, their last name, and they select their own username. I don't care what they have as a username as long as it's 3 letters long, 3 characters long, and not offensive. Okay? So I just run my kids through on the very first day of school. So Jane, would you create the first kid that walks into your classroom? You could create yourself, and it's probably a good thing. Yes, ma'am.
So now they create their own username. What if they forget it? Is it hard to go back and?
Well, Randy has a good approach to that. I actually tell them to pick one that they might use. I'd say use your Twitter if you don't know anything else.
Yeah.
Something they already know. So I asked them to pick something that I don't care if they use their Twitter unless their Twitter is big nasty or something, okay? Or Thug Nasty. Actually, I had a kid who wanted to use Thug Nasty. I was like, I don't think I can let you use that, okay? But so I would but you can show it to them later.
3 characters.
Okay? You can show it to them later. You have that information, okay? I'm not going to assign it.
Yeah.
I have all seniors, and by the time you are 17, 18 years old, you should be able to remember a username.
Right.
That's a life skill, and I'm wanting to build independence.
Now, when I was loading it with the CSV file, I made a username for them. And it was a pain in the rear because I was constantly having to remind them. What I do is in my school, every student has a unique user ID. And so I just tell them that's your username, because they have to enter that every time anyway, and it's 5 letters of their last name, 3 letters of their first name. And the school's already taken care of the issue when I had 2 Anna Trans in the same classroom. Okay? They already are distinguished by their school username. So it's taken care of.
Sir?
Yes, do you have, is that 3-character minimum, is that yours, or is that?
No, that's the system. That's the system. Great, thank
Yeah.
you. Great question. That's a
Yeah.
system restriction. The system restriction is 3 characters, and I believe the upper limit is 32, or is there even an upper limit anymore?
The more, and we go 8, so they're all doing the same. If you
Right.
have one person put in 3 and somebody else put in 20, it takes that person 20 a long time to sign in.
And there are kids who will pick a ridiculously long username initially, and then within like a first week or so, they'll come up to say, Mr. Bobby, can I change my username?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, yeah, you probably want to do that.
Now-
But again, it's an independence thing. And I am okay with that.
Yeah. Part of the other side with that username is on each computer, every username must be unique. So you can't have 2 Tran A's or 2 Tran ANAs. They've got to be different. So
In
that's
all
where
of
the
your
school-
classes
Yeah.
for that computer. So if you have that kid in first period and 4th period, or 2 different kids with the similar names, they have to be different even across class periods, okay?
And if you have 3 teachers sharing one
If
computer,
it's the same kid, okay,
thing.
so yeah,
They've
it's
gotta be different.
another great question. If it's the same child if you have a child in 2 different periods, the same child, does anybody have the same child in 2 different class periods? Yeah, I do too.
Mm-hmm.
You see down here where it says assign classes? If you click on that, you can assign that child to multiple class periods, or you can move it because the schedules change, right? Somebody
There you go.
has a different, they have to get a different class in and schedules change. So you can bump a kid from one class to another or dual enroll him in everything. Now what I actually do is I actually create myself a student class username and put myself in all of them as well. So I don't have to remember everything. You had a question or? No, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, can you go back and say, if you have like two Johnny Smiths,
Yes.
you can't have a Johnny Smith in period 1 and a Johnny Smith in period 2. They have to be,
If they're two different people and you want, if you have Johnny Smith, that one child in first and fourth periods, then you could assign them to both classes. But if you have Johnny Smith and Jane Smith, they can't both be Smith J. Okay,
It's just in the username.
Just
Their
in their-
first name, last name doesn't matter. It's that username because
That
it ties
username-
everything to that username.
Everything is tied to this. This is important, okay? So and we're making a big deal about this so that you guys you'll run into it. And if Jane would try to enter Tommy K for the next student username, she'll get an error message. So would you do that for me, Jane? Would you click Add Next Student?
And put in any name. Just
Put
use
in
Tommy
any
K.
other name. I don't care what you name the student, but try to claim the username. What'd you have, Tom K?
Tom K.
Tom K.
And add.
And it'll give you a message. All the worst things that happen, it says that username already exists. So Tom K has to pick a different username. So he has to be K Tom.
Yeah.
All right?
And if you have two Toms in the same period, it'll say you've already got a Tom in this class, and that's fine. It's like a display name, and it'll show up just two Toms, and then you can go in and adjust the display name, which shows up on the screen, to identify the differences between the two if you want to later. But that doesn't affect username. It'll let you do that.
So add at least 2 students. You can add more. If it were up to me, I'd be adding my 6 dogs, but that's right, 6.
And the other, it's not laziness that he has his students do this. I'll tell you the real reason, at least for my students. They are, I think, mentally adding themselves to the class. It's kind of a way that they're saying, yes, I want to be part of this. And it's the way I kind of start that community that I was talking about. They're coming up to my computer, putting themselves in. That's the way I look at it.
So you didn't, wait a second, did you hear my wife just said that I wasn't lazy?
She just justified your
I
laziness.
justified your laziness. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So, and it really, there's something about that little thing starting off, especially imagine the first day of class doing that starts things off. Or if you're just getting a new system, you've got this new equipment, getting them to join you together. There's something, and I teach a lot of developmental math students who don't like math, and it's their first initial step into my
making
class.
sense, Jane?
So.
Thank you. Okay, after you've added at least 2 students, go ahead and click Finish. So after you've done that, it'll give you the message that was successfully created. Click OK. And now you have created your first class, and you've got students, and they're running amok because you ain't got a teacher. Okay? Well, at least there's only one here.
Okay, this is my period 2. How do I go back to,
Beautiful question. Oh, Jane, are you about to figure out how to change class periods?
I am.
Tell us what you're doing, Jane. Don't leave us
I'm
hanging.
going up to the drop down where the class is listed at the top, and you can select which class you are in, and you can toggle back and forth.
That's why I had you do multiple classes, because you're going to have 6 of them. And I have to do this between every period, right? You're going to have to change from first to second period. And I'll tell you, maybe it's a sign I'm getting old, but occasionally I forget to change the class or start the class, and the kids will tell me. Okay? So you'll learn how to do that because the kids will yell at you if you don't. Okay? I did choose wisely, didn't I? Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Username that's
Actually, I think Tracy chose you, but I'm not going to say Tracy made a
I
smart
talked
decision.
to her.
Oh, okay.
I asked her.
Yes, ma'am.
Our display, like yours, is actually showing last names, not first.
Oh, okay. Yes, great. Yeah, it's not showing the names like it is up here. Okay, I'm going to, was that what your question was too, sir? Or?
my question was, since you guys create 2 periods, do you want one student in 1 period and
No, I want you to have one class. Ultimately, I want you to have one class with 2 students in it because you're going to need to have 2 calculators connected. So Jane has got her first period class with Jonathan and
Katie.
Katie, whatever. Oh, now,
I knew that.
yeah, I should know that. You're a Mean Girls fan, aren't you? The limit does not exist. Caddy Heron. You know, my kids love. I teach at kind of a preppy school. They love them some Mean Girls. All right. All right. So let's talk about issues here, how you make the kids appear, and how there's a couple different aesthetic things you could do right here that really help. See where there's a student up here and it's got like a little name tag? There's a drop down there. Is that where it is? Yeah.
Yep.
There is a display name. If you are uncomfortable having a Billy Bob on your roster, but you want to let Billy Bob be Billy Bob because Billy Bob is Billy Bob, you could have him as Richard Murphy officially in your schedule, but you could have it displaying on the screen as Billy Bob. Okay? So there's a difference. There was a difference between first name, which could be their actual, official given name, and then display name could be what they want to be called. I don't mess with that. I really don't care that much about it. That I'm okay. I can decode it myself. But if I want to, and that speeds up the entry. Okay, whatever you type in as first name is what's picked up as display name if you leave it blank. So if you change this, you can change this to other formats. If you want it to be hidden so that nobody knows who they are, you could do that. But Jane's system is was set on display name, and yours were set on last name. Okay, so it gives you the flexibility to change it however makes you happy. Okay, I typically leave it in display name.
So do I.
Because then the kids, that's what they want to be. Okay? The other thing that's nice, and this will answer your other question, down in the lower right where it says student view. There's two icons there. One is classroom view where you have the little icons, and the other is list view where you see their usernames. So when a student forgets his username, you can click there and pull it up. Sometimes, especially like at the beginning of the year, you're doing it, and then you go on break for Labor Day, and you come back, and they forget. You can pull this up real quick, okay? But typically, I leave it in display name, seating chart view. And the seating chart can be arranged. You can drag the students
Click on one and drag.
around the screen. You can drag Katie to wherever she wants to go and put them in order according to their seating chart. Okay? So if you want to be uber organized, which I'm not, you could have done all this work ahead of time and put them in there and they could pick their seats. Now, the only problem with that is for Jane looking at the kids, it's going to be backwards for them looking at the screen. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm talking about? The whole backwards left-right thing that you have to do as a teacher. I'm awful at that. I always have to say, okay, it's going to the left. Okay, or I get it wrong. No, it's going to the right.
I do it
okay?
reverse.
And yeah, I always have to, I do it wrong every time. Okay? Who's good at that? Anybody? I just can't do that. But you have to put the icons in the order for the kids if you want them to sit where it is. Okay. Okay. So the only other thing is these kids are running amok. How do I get the teacher in there to settle them down? It's under File, at the very top left, under Settings. File, Settings, Teacher Preferences. Sit there for a second. Oh, okay. Or don't listen to me. Now you're being Tracy. That's okay.
Go back.
You might want to write that sequence down because it's a little hidden. I don't know if Tracy put that in the handout for me. Did you put that in there? I think you did.
I think it is in there.
Okay, File,
It's in
Settings, Teacher Preferences.
I saw it.
Okay. That, you might want to highlight that if you want the teacher icon in the handout or on your class because it's a little deep. It's not, immediately apparent where that is.
Right.
Okay? And then what you're going to do is create an account for yourself. Okay? So if you choose that, thank you, Jane, you can now assign yourself a username and a password. Now, all that really does for you is that makes your results differentiated from the student results. So if you're playing along, your answers or your screen's going to be a different color than theirs. Okay? I actually sometimes don't want mine to be different because like sometimes I play devil's advocate. I'll slip in a wrong answer on purpose as a student and try to prompt discussion when I'm teaching. So sometimes I will create myself a teacher account, and usually I make it simple because I'm a TI geek. I use TTT, real original. So you can come to room 310 in Hot Springs, Arkansas, Lakeside High School, and log into my calculator now. Go ahead. So go ahead, assign yourself a username and password. You're going to have to type this in every day, every class. So don't make it real long.
Yeah.
That's
You
why I
want
do
to be able to
TT.
go quick. That's
why I do
use
TTT.
AAA. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to make it long, don't you?
Why? How can
Well,
we
you're
do
going to have to
that?
type it in, and you're going to have to type it in a non-QWERTY keyboard every day, 6 times a day. Okay?
Right there.
So Jane is awesome. You
And
are.
then that check mark right there about adding teacher to classroom view. You can have a teacher account without the kids knowing there's a teacher account.
And you can stalk.
There, okay? Or
be
you
that
can have
teacher
it show up
stalker.
there.
Wait, no, that's
so they
not
won't.
what I'm saying.
If you say show it to classroom view, the students will see every time you log in because your little icon will change color. But if that's not seen, you can still log in. They just don't know you're logged in.
And this
It's
is
up to
where
you.
you can individualize your results. Okay? But sometimes even then they can still tell who I am. So
You can leave. You check it.
Check.
Let it show. That's fine.
let it show and check the box down at the bottom. All the check. Go check crazy. Yes, Aurelia? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever not been displaying myself. We have to play with
I
that.
usually have mine show.
I usually have myself showing. I've never actually
Yeah.
tried that, to be honest with you, because I always just have myself showing. I've actually never
Yeah.
I've never in a classroom setting been the stalking stealth teacher, but you need to try that out and let me know, all right? Okay, so hit OK, and now you've got a teacher, okay? So now you've got a teacher, you've got students, you've got your classroom, we're ready to go. And I do that all on day one. Now, it took us a little longer to do that because we were talking about the logistics, okay? How long does it take to do that in classroom? And again, I said do this on the very first day, and on the very first day, what happens? You have a million announcements, and you're handing out books and all that stuff. So it's not a bad thing to do on that day as well, because you're not really losing all of it. How much time do you think it takes to get 30 kids through? 10 minutes? 15 at most? My experience is more on the 10-minute side. Which, of course, if you've got and it depends on the age of your kids. Remember, I'm dealing with seniors for me, but I also grab them as they walk in the room. Do you ever have kids, especially on the first day of school, that are coming in a little early? As soon as they come in, they're doing it before the bell's ringing. So I actually find it ends up taking maybe 5 minutes of class time. And in 5 minutes on that first day, and for the buy-in, and for the fact that I didn't have to go pull down a wrong roster off my list, and then I'm going to have to go fix the names of the kids that want to be called whatever they want to be called, just done with it. And they're more likely to remember their username because they chose it. Okay? So that's my philosophy. That's how I manage it. There are a lot of people who get real bunched up about this process. But it just doesn't take, it takes a total of maybe 45 minutes on that first day of all my classes and of class time, maybe 45 minutes of class time on the first day, and so be it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have a wireless keyboard also that's connected to my computer. That
Yes.
Sometimes we do an activity where they're just kind of getting to know each other and all that, and I just pass the keyboard, and they just pass it up and down the rows. I've done that before too, and they just type it all in and click, and away you go.
And a wireless mouse.
And a mouse with
Yeah,
it.
I have a
yes.
wireless mouse and wireless keyboard, so they don't have to get back in my stuff.
Right.
Would this be something you might recommend to do at an open house prior to?
You could even start this at an open house. Thank you. I've wasted our open house the night before, because the night before, or like maybe like a couple of nights before, we have an open house and parents are supposed to come, but how many senior parents come to? So I'm going to start making my kids, the kids who do come, do it then.
At back to school night, I gave the kids, they would all get extra credit if when their parents came, they could log in and use how to take a quick call. And I gave them a week's notice beforehand.
That the parents had to do it or they had to do it?
The parents. If they
Oh,
it
okay.
was totally optional if they wanted extra credit. Well, it was the best back to school night ever because the parents were scared blankless. They were so nervous. They came in, they were a wreck that they would not get it right and get their kid the points. It didn't matter what I said. It was like all the onus was on them.
Did you have the parents log into the student's account or did they create?
Log into the student,
Oh, so the student had to basically teach the parent
they
how
had
to.
to teach the parent how to do it, and then they had to know how to take a quick call. So I sent them.
That's wonderful.
Oh, that's funny.
Did you all hear what she said? Okay, yeah, she had her parents do it. That's a neat idea, having the parents do it.
Talk during the week. Are you letting your mom do it? Or oh, not my dad. I was like, actually, not my mom.
That's funny.
It generated a lot of good conversation.
The way our structure is, though, we have individual parent conferences. I don't have that kind of structure where I have quite the same way. We have it before school starts, so my kids don't actually, but I love that idea of having, if you have a parent night in the school year, let the parents experience it too, using the student's account and making the student teach the parent what to do. So, okay, sorry, any other thoughts or comments about this before we get into actually doing, now that, like I said, that's logistics, and that's dry and boring and blah, 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 but hopefully I gave you some tips to make that process efficient and, alleviate some stress about it, okay? So.
And what do you do if you get a student who comes on the third day of class? And now you've got to add them, you're past all that. You've already, you've done that other setup. Find
go,
the
Jane.
icon. Jane's already found it, so, and that's what reminded me of that. That little icon for a single person with the plus sign, that's add student. If you click on that, you bring up that information again. So it's really easy. Usually I add the students after the fact. I don't have them come up necessarily and do it, but.
The other end of the spectrum is if you have a child move away, you would click the student and hit the student with the X on it. And there's always kind of it's kind of sad when if I ever do that, do that in front of the class, there's always a few awes. Because it's like, do it, just do it. Let's kill Katie.
Are you sure?
No. If you hit it.
Bye-bye.
Oh, see, you did it. Oh, that was, sarcastic awes are not appreciated, all right? But you could do, so I'm not kidding here. It's funny every time I do, and I think it's because they lost a friend. Somebody in the room liked them, and whenever, so.
Yeah. Question right here, though, Cory.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
You skipped over password.
I did skip over. No, I didn't. I didn't skip over password. I told you I don't care, but I'm not doing anything the kid can do for me, right? Now, they could have typed it in while they did it up here, okay? Great question, and that's going to be our segue into starting class, okay? Don't you love it when somebody asks the perfect question in class to lead you where you're going to go anyway? We didn't assign, now these got all these accounts, but we don't have passwords, right? We've got usernames, we don't have passwords. Okay, and I did skip over password. You only have to fill in the first 3 fields in that student to create an account. But basically, when you get a new account, like when you get your new email, or you got an email at your job, they give you a temporary or a dummy password, and when you log in, what's the first thing it does? It prompts you to change your password, right? What's going to happen is the first time this student logs in, what they choose will become their password, henceforth and forevermore. So, in the upper right corner where it says Begin Class, go ahead and click Begin Class and look at your icons. What happens to the student icons? They light up slightly. I make this, again, in my analogy to a real classroom, because I have to think these things through real deeply. This is like opening the door. Okay? I opened the door to the virtual classroom, but nobody's come in yet. And now they log in. On the very first time they log in, what they type in their password will become their password. So take up your handheld. Now you get to be a child.
Yep. That's all you have to do as the teacher.
That's
start
all you
the
have to do as a
class.
teacher. You're ready
Now
for them
it's
to walk in the door.
Student's job.
Now the students will pick up their handheld and they will turn it on. From the home screen, they'll choose number 5, settings. And then under that one, it would be number 5, log in.
Now you go to the-
My kids learn very quickly,
Turn
home
them on.
5. What do you get? Now we won't be able to see this part because it's happening on your handhelds. I'm sorry for those of you watching the video, if anybody ever watches this
Home,
video.
5. There you go.
You have to type in your username and there's a field for username and a field for password. What you choose for what you've already chosen your username, what you choose for password becomes your assigned password. Okay?
So now you
So
just enter in whatever you
you're
want.
choosing now. Don't forget because you can never remember it, it will never be fixed, and you're pretty much locked out. You're going to have to flunk my class if you forget this password.
What if I forgot my username?
How do you find your username? I don't know your name over here. How do we find the
You have to know
username?
that password, don't you? Do you remember what it is? Oh, okay.
I already showed you how to find the usernames. You can click on the roster view to see the usernames.
That's
Okay.
one way.
That's one way, or you could have just double-clicked on the icon for that student and opened up the student properties.
Someone I was working with yesterday said the first week of his class, this is the view he actually shows when they're coming in.
The
So when they're
username
coming
view.
in, if they forgot their username, they just
The
go
list
look,
view, the list view.
List
The list view.
The list view,
and then they're able to see it.
I will do that sometimes, like after Christmas break, sometimes I have a kid that'll forget or whatever, or whenever,
Log that one in.
But yeah, you could leave this student list view up to to remind them, to prompt them, okay?
And then as
So-
you log in, take a look at your screen, and what does that do to the icon?
What does it do to the icon after the student has logged in? Now he's lit up, and what do you think the bright student icon means in my stupid analogies? He's
turned
come
on.
into the room, right?
He's ready to
He's
learn.
made it to class, he's ready to learn. Guess who
Not
takes
yet.
his attendance this way?
But
Okay.
Mr. Bobby, I forgot my password.
Oh, we'll get there, just hush, Randy.
You said
Yes, sir.
if you double click on the icon, it will bring up.
They're already logged in.
While
You have
he's
to- if
logged
somebody
in,
who's
you
not
can't do
logged
that, but
in.
if you double click on Jonathan, you can see
There you go.
Jonathan's property. So once a student's logged in, I don't need to do that because but, yes, sir.
What if they wanted to log out?
They can't log out. You can never log
Can't
out.
log out.
You can't.
Only when you stop the class?
Only when I end class do they log out, so they will not disconnect. The only way they can disconnect is to remove the network adapter. If it's the CX, they could take the little yellow hat off, or if the older ones, they had the little cradles. Now they can do that, and I'll get a communication error about that student, then I go over there and get on to them. But yeah, no, there's no log out. Okay, there's no disconnect.
My frustration has been them communicating with the hub. I have students that have a hard time connecting.
They, and I do sometimes too, but a lot of that is they need to slow down, and we can talk during a short break. I'll give you some tips on that one, okay? All right, so, you okay? Okay. All right, so, sorry, darn it, Jane, what, oh, man. Ha. You gotta do it again. I'm mean to Jane. All right. Told you weren't going to like me. But all right, now wait a second. Randy prompted me. That was the end of day one. They logged in. Maybe I did something with them or whatever, or just to get them in the system. Day one's over. Day two comes in. Before day two begins, how many of you remember a password that you've just set? The next day. You're my hero, okay? Because I can never, what do you know? A lot of us write it down, which we're not supposed to do, and we forget it.
Use
Or
the
we-
same one for everything.
I use the same one for everything, right? Which we're not supposed to do, but this guy, he can remember any password he's ever had, I'm sure, right? Okay? So, here's what I do to deal with passwords, and Randy prompted me for this. When the first day is over, now they all have a username. that they chose themselves, and they have a password that they chose themselves. Okay? So if we do Tracy's trick of coming back on day 2 and being in that list view. So Jane, would you go back to the list view for me, please? You don't have to do this unless you want to just be cute. On day 2, this is what's up. Okay? They can see their username, so that reminds them. What I'll do is I will click on the students here before they come in the room. Click on Katie, hold the shift key down, click on the last one, select all the students. So Jane, I want you to select Jonathan and Katie. Shift, and then
click on
shift
Jonathan.
or control. Control will click individuals, but if you do shift, you click the first one, or just do control A, click all the students. So after class ends on the first day, I select all the students. And then I go up to class at the very top. Now the very, very top row,
Very
not the
top.
class tab.
There you go.
Class,
Click on it.
click on it and choose reset student passwords.
Second one from the bottom.
So now when they walk in on day 2, guess what? They don't have a password. So on day 2, Tracy comes up to me and says, Mr. Bobby, I don't remember my password. Instead of doing this to her, I said, you know what, Tracy, I bet if you think real hard, you'll remember what your password is.
Now, I don't know if you guys saw what popped up on the screen there. Let's say you start class and you forget to reset the passwords. I've done that before. And here's this screen. Well, if a student has already logged in, it won't affect their password.
You
so
can
anybody
still do
who's
it even
not
if
logged in, it resets.
For the first week, until Tracy stops asking me, I will reset the passwords every day. Do you understand why I do that? I can make it into a battle, or I can make it into an opportunity to make them feel good. And I mean, I'm serious. Think real hard. I bet you'll get it.
And then it's the student who made a mistake and go, oh no, I made a mistake, but how did it work? Well, but I reset it the next day.
But I reset
so,
it. After you do it for about a week, then it stops. The first week I reset every day. And then problem solved. Because after I've done my password like 5 times, I know it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No.
So you select them all. What if one student forgets their password?
I could do an
Just
individual
select-
one later on. Yeah, later on
Okay,
I could.
so go ahead and click OK.
I mean, they do figure that out. Eventually they'll figure out what I was doing. But
So now just click
by
on
then
open
they were
space.
starting to realize what kind of teacher I
double
am,
click
and
on
they
one
realize
person.
it's okay. Okay?
Okay.
But I'm not going to make it
No,
into.
double
I'm
click
not
them.
going to make
Double
things
click
into a battle. I'm not going to. I don't need to stress about usernames and passwords. Okay?
If you just need to do one student, I just double click on that student, click reset right there. And that just resets that one. You don't have to worry about selecting all of them and doing that other process.
Yeah. Yeah, you understand what so it's just it's a way to, because all I want them to learn that first week is the process, and by repeating the process, they'll learn whatever password they eventually settle on. Hit cancel. So please, I would like you now to get 2 calculators logged in to your class, and you could be in student view, a seating chart view. Would you go back to classroom view where you have the heads again? And so now we have 2 students logged in, and so now we're ready to do Navigator, okay? Now we're ready to actually do some of the cool stuff. Now, who's been in a Navigator session and had quick polls sent to them before? So some of you have seen the idea of a quick poll. If you've never seen that in a workshop before, been as a student, I'm sure you've seen like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or seen response systems in the classroom. There are all kinds of these little clicker systems where the teacher can ask a question and the students can respond through their calculators, right? I mean, through a clicker. So one of the benefits of the Navigator is it turns your calculator system into a response system. Okay, so even if you're not familiar with, if you haven't personally experienced it, you will at least, you have the idea of where all of your students can respond. So we're going to start with something called Quick Poll. The Quick Poll icon is the one that looks like a little ballot box. So if you would find that icon and go ahead and click on the little ballot box icon, you'll get a pop-up that says choose the question type. Now, I want you to kind of stay with me for the time being. Don't get too crazy or anything. But there's all kinds of question types. There are the range of multiple choice. There are open response ones where you can have students enter text responses. We're going to talk about all of these eventually. Equations and expressions, coordinates, where you can have them doing graphing stuff with points and lists and stuff. And then there's some image ones and some chemistry ones. Okay? I'm going to start simple with a yes-no question. So click yes, no, and choose insert. And what this does is now we were on the class tab, right? Now we're moving to, it moved us automatically to the documents tab. And if you notice down here at the bottom of the screen, this document 1 was the document that was already opened as part of the software. And then over here is this thing we just created by, it's a new document that contains a yes-no question. Okay? So now we've got this new document. It's called Period 1 QP for quick polls and date. I actually like that name because it gives me the date and that I would be at. Those are the questions I'm going to ask first period on March 8th. Okay? So the question, and Jane has already, you guys did great picking our driver today. Have you learned anything today? Is a yes-no question.
These quick polls are kind of designed that if, in the middle of your teaching, you assess your students all the time before you move on, right? Just doing a quick check, how are we doing, and that's what the idea behind this type of question or this setup. So that's why they call it a quick poll, okay?
Okay, so that's the teacher typing a question that he or she is about to ask the class, okay? So now I want to ask my kids this question.
Can you only do one question at a time?
Oh, I love you, Jane. You are the best driver I've had in many a years. Sorry for those of you who were in a workshop with me. Anyway. All right. Yes, you can actually do that. Now, so if I want to, Jane's organized, I got my plans down, and these are the things I want to do ahead of time kind of person. I can tell that about her already. Go to Insert. Up here, this insert. No.
I don't see it.
Yeah, you're supposed to look at my finger, not at the screen. All right, click on that, and that drop down, you can choose question. And this menu will look amazingly familiar. So now Jane wants to ask a second question. Do you want to do a true, false, a yes, no, or an agree, disagree? Now the question I always ask my kids, I almost ask them this almost every day, at least for the first half of the year until they get sick of me asking, is did you eat breakfast? The very first question the first day, and I ask that question every day for at least 9 weeks because it builds that community, okay? So you can ask any question you want, but I do ask that question every day, and the kids get sick. It's funny, actually, sometimes they're like, you haven't asked us for breakfast in a while, Mr. Bobby. And I was like, oh, sorry, I thought we were kind of past that. But, I actually do that because I want them to know I care about those kinds of things, okay? And I'll tell you, it's kind of disturbing. When I ask that question, my calculus kids, it's almost 100% yes. My kids that are in that fourth year math class, it's less than 50% who ate breakfast. So it's little things like that that can make a big difference. So you can have some things that seem innocuous but actually are pretty profound as well. Okay, so Jane's got 2 questions prepared. Now you can prepare as many as you want. If you know you're going to ask these 5 questions in your lesson, you know you're going to ask them, prepare them ahead of time. Okay? Now, I'm not that organized. I'm not Jane. I admire and respect the Janes and the Tracys of the world, but I'm Cory, and I'm a real fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. They didn't know what I was going to do, what I was going to do after break. Did you? I didn't know until I just picked up, okay? Okay? They didn't know which way I was going, so I just surprised them, okay? But you have both flexibilities here is my point. And I'm going to show you how to be a Cory, and you're already learning how to be a Jane. Okay? Because there are all kinds of us out there, right? Okay? So, you could add 5, 10 questions. Okay? I'm not that prepared. What I do is I go to Insert, and I choose my question, and I just say yes, no, and I don't put anything in the prompt. Or if I do put anything, just enter your answer. And that's it. Because I'm going to ask that question over and over and over. And how are they going to know what the answer yes or no to? Whatever comes out of Mr. Bobby's mouth next. Okay? Because I'm not typing it in the classroom. I just ask the question, and they answer on the calculator. Okay? Y'all cool with that? All right, how do we send this to the kids? Listen to them. Don't look at me. I'm not helping you.
Start poll. Oh, it's not send to class?
What's the difference? Oh, you're like an hour ahead of
How do
me.
you send it to the class?
Oh, that Jane is a smart young lady. If you send it to the class, it's going to send all 3 questions at once. If you click Start Poll, what's going to appear on the calculators right now? The highlighted question. So if you have 5 questions and you want to ask them in a certain sequence, you just go through the list of questions in your page sorter, you click the question you want at that time, and ask that question. Okay? That make sense, Jane?
Yes.
But send to class, now we're actually going to talk about sending an entire document to the class shortly. But right now I want to stay just on starting poll, doing 1 question at a time. There's a difference between sending an entire document and doing a pop-up and doing it just as a response. So we're going to do a simple 1 question at a time, fire off at a time. Now, what happened means, look at your calculators, there's a pop-up on your calculator with the current question on it. Be a student and respond. And if you're saying this is the question is, this is the best session I've ever attended, the answer is yes.
How do I submit my answer? Go up to the top, where? So on the handheld, you're going up to the top. Are you saying like up here? Right up here in the middle, you can click, there's that little drop-down menu. Okay, so you can go up to that drop-down menu and do it. Or you can hit 1. Oh, when you get up there. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody know another way you can submit it?
Use
the touchpad.
You really don't have to submit. I have your answers. Okay? You have the answers. It just means you're locking in your final answer.
Yeah.
Okay?
If you go to the DOC button on the right-hand side of the handheld, the dock button, that'll bring up the option to submit also.
There's 2 ways.
Okay.
You can scroll up to the little drop down at the top and submit that way, or the button on the upper right side, it says DOC over documents. It's right under the on button. Submit is an option under there. Do you see this up here where there's a little drop down? Use your trackpad, your touchpad, I'm sorry, and move your cursor up there and click on it. And that'll give you the pop-up. Neither of us use that way. I use Doc Submit. Doc Submit is much easier for kids. My kids don't even know there's a second way.
No, I just tell them dock.
Doc, press it.
If you already submitted, it won't show.
Yeah, once you've done it. Once you've submitted your answer, you can't do it again. A quick poll, what the quick poll does to your calculator is it puts a pop-up on the screen. It takes everything else off of the calculator for the time being. It doesn't take it off, but just kind of puts this question in front of everything else as a pop-up. The child has to deal with it, and then it goes away once they submit. Okay? At least the way we have it set up. Yes, sir. Oh, you actually sent the whole thing. You didn't hit start poll. You sent the whole thing. That's what we wanted to do. You got, now, see it says quick poll? That's a little different approach. Okay? All right. Now, do you understand what the students have to do now? Because it's important that you understand the student perspective, because you're going to have to tell them what to do. Okay? But now, after they've responded, you have to go in and see the results. And you can display your results. Now, something happened when you started the poll. And I want somebody to tell me what's happened.
Went from 0 to working to 2.
Okay, this is different. Do you notice where we wrote the questions? We wrote the questions in documents. When we chose Start Poll, it was a subtle difference that popped us over to review. Jane, would you click back on Documents tab for a moment? You see how subtle the change is? From the Documents tab, when you chose Start Poll, it automatically moved you to Review. And if you didn't catch that, you might, some people get lost in where they are. Those words, content, class, document, review, and portfolio, are very important. You need to know those and know which one you're on. Okay? Because you write questions in documents. What do you think you do in review? You look at the answers, you look at the responses. Okay? So you create in documents, you assess or evaluate in review. So this is the question. The student data is here. If you click on the student data box, you will see the student responses. Down to student data, there you go. And you'll see that one student answered yes and one student answered no. To what question? Whatever I asked them verbally. So I don't prepare, I may be somewhat between Jane and actually what I tell you, to be honest. There are times I have questions, I know I'm going to ask this question, and I'll go ahead and do it. But oftentimes, I will also always tack on these blank ones so that I can just fly. Okay? Now, what if I want to ask another question? I don't have to go back to documents, I just have to click on that blank template. So click on in the page sorter right here to the left, click on that, choose Stop This Current Poll, and start it again. I can ask that same blank question. Now I'm giving them a different verbal prompt, but they could respond. And that way, it's faster. I don't have to write the question, and I can just keep using the same one over and over and over. You see what I'm saying? Now, before you answer, Jane, click down on student data before you submit. If you click on student data before they start responding or as soon as they start responding, when they respond, watch what happens to the graph. And as you change your answers, so once you change your answer, the graph changes. One of the neatest ideas I've ever heard for a yes-no question or this kind of interactive graph, if they do not submit, I don't care if my kids submit really often, especially on this. I leave an open question going for a while. If I'm doing something that's really not a navigator, I'll ask them the question, do you understand? Or are you okay? and yes or no. And guess what? They can change throughout the lesson. So if I am confusing them, all my yeses change to nos, I know it's time for me to stop. I could actually have that running on my screen off to the side and be teaching something else over here, and just me watching for them to say, hey, I need help. Okay? So, they don't have to submit an answer, because as soon as they type, it shows up there. In fact, sometimes I might want them to change. Okay? Yeah, I can pre-program them, or I could do them on the fly. Yes, you send a file. We're going to get there. I want you to understand the idea of a quick poll, one question, then we're going to send the entire document.
Because if you're in your class and you just want a quick sense how they're doing, you're not going to send 5 questions at a time at them, right? You're going to do one at a time. That's why it's quick poll, as opposed to multiples at a time, which would then be a document. Okay.
Yes, you can see all the results. Now, that brings into issue, when do you look at that and how do you look at that, okay? Would you want to look at it right now in front of everyone? No. Okay, or at least if it's something I'm taking for a grade, or if it's something that's got yes or no, I would not look at it in front of everyone, right? Because of liability issues, or just because I don't want to embarrass somebody. Because if there's only 2 kids who got it wrong and I pull them up and it's Randy and Tracy, I've pretty much just ostracized those 2 and they're not ever going to listen to me again. Not that they ever do anyway. But if you click up here on the student icon in that toolbox, not
that
Jane.
one, down.
I should, that one right there. That will show you who answered what. Okay?
And what
And
am
a
I doing-
timestamp.
And what am I doing when I'm looking at that?
You could do you all have like a freeze or a blank option on your projector? I have something called freeze.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's called mute or dark or something like that. If you press that, it dims or freezes your projector, so then you could look and then go take it off of that and then go back to public display. Okay, so yes, you can.
My old projector didn't have a freeze. I had a little index card taped right here. I'd just slip it down, do a quick look, flip it back up, and away you go.
Yeah, that was old school.
That was old school.
Yeah, we've been there too, but a lot of them projectors are coming down in price. So if you are getting as you get projectors, that's a feature that I use all the time. That freeze option. I'll put my bell ringer, or I'll put something from the work on, and then freeze it and take attendance. That's a beautiful thing. So, okay.
Did you also see when she hovered over the answers, the bars, it tells you who's in that bar.
And I turn that off. You can turn that off as well, because sometimes I'll do that and the kids will find out I don't want them to know who was right and wrong. I can go back and look at it later. But oftentimes, if there's 2 incorrect answers, what happens? Either they see the area of their way because they go back and reassess, or somebody else in the room explains. We'll play how did they get that answer game? What do you think that person did? And they'll say, well, they did order of operations wrong, or they divided when they should have multiplied, or whatever the case may be. Okay? So I usually let the class deal with the wrong answers, and I don't even look at them, because we'll have addressed it right there in the moment of their error. And they got the feedback from the moment. Okay?
Plus, there's a lot of good math discussion going on when you're looking at how did they get this wrong answer.
Think about it. That's a pretty profound skill, analyzing someone else's error. How could somebody have gotten that answer? Well, that's a pretty deep question. Yes, sir.
The student says, I know what the correct answer, but by accident I just entered in an incorrect keystroke.
If they enter in the wrong answer, I could have allowed the option for them to resubmit. Okay, the way the initial default is, once you submit, the question goes away, henceforth and forevermore, you're done. But I could go in and change the properties of my question so that they could resubmit their answer. And I've been known to do that from time to time. Is that under the toolbar? Yeah, if you
Yeah,
go
it's
back
under
over
the tools.
Under the tools, the one down here,
Right there.
there. Or,
But you have to
oh, you have to be
be in
on
the
the question.
document.
You have to be on the question.
No. It's under the tools pull down.
Oh, it's under, yeah, it's
Is it up
tools,
there?
yeah, there it is. I'm sorry, yeah, it's up there.
Nope, there.
You're right, Tracy, I'm sorry. I guess that's what happened.
Quick
Quick
poll
poll
options.
options, and then you could allow resubmit. Yes, sorry. And that will allow them to change their mind. Thank you.
They can continue to change their mind until you stop the poll. So
If you've selected them and not.
if
you
you've
s-
allowed them to resubmit, and there's times when I'll start a poll and we'll do have a conversation, and they can see the answers and they might be all over the board, and they're allowed to change it. And my goal is by the end of that little discussion, they're all on the right answer.
It's not like you've ever asked a question that had a misleading answer, right? And then after the discussion, you want them to finally make the right analysis. So that's what, I could see him being that kind of tricky teacher. Actually, my students have a new nickname for me this year. Actually, it's been for about 2 years now. My last name is Bobby. So I don't know if any of you have seen Talladega Nights. Instead of calling me Ricky Bobby, they call me Tricky Bobby because I always ask tricky questions. So, all right.
In our state, in Washington, we have end-of-course exams. And on the multiple choice questions, all of the wrong answers are distractors, which means it's a common error finds that answer. And if you can't, when we're writing those questions, if you can't justify that wrong answer, that answer can't be a possible option. And so I do that a lot to get the kids used to that.
Okay, let's go back to documents, please. Now, we have this period 1 quick poll question that we document that we created. Jane's created her 2 questions. We've got the one Cory blank question that I use as my default so that I have it for any time I want them to answer yes, no. But how often and how robust is yes, no? Yeah, I don't ask a lot of yes, no questions in my calculus class, right? I ask questions that require a number as an answer, right? I ask questions that require a mathematical expression as an answer, or a graph, or whatever. So, an equation, whatever. So there are other types. I would like to add to this question set. So let's go back to insert on one of the icon insert.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, we're going to insert another question, and let's move on. All the multiple choice ones are variants of true, false, of yes, no. True, false, A, B, C, D, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Custom choice would be ones that would allow you to put your own options in there. Okay? So let's try open response. There's 2 types of open response, explanation and text match. What do you think the difference is? Exactly. One you can write whatever you want, and the other you have to have an exact match. The evaluation questions cannot be graded. They're just there for a response. Text match, you want them to have a, now there's some flexibility. I could allow multiple options as a text match. I can allow, I can put, but I typically use explanation if I'm going to ask for a short answer in words that I don't necessarily, I'm not going to take all these for a grade. All the time you ask questions in class, do you take every question you've ever asked for a grade? No. Okay? Quick poll is a way of getting every kid to respond to a question you would ask. Instead of me asking the question, I'm still asking the question verbally because I can't stop asking questions. That's what I do. But I'm just using the Navigator to get them to respond. And you know who loves Navigator the best? Those 4th-year math class students who don't really like math, because they actually do some of them actually do care about school and want to try, but they are afraid to be embarrassed, and they know they can be. That's why I'm real protective about their anonymity. I want them to feel safe. I want them to try and not be embarrassed. And they also can answer without being, if they're cool, they can still answer without being laughed at by their friends.
When you ask a question in class, how many kids respond? The same 2 or 3 or 4 maybe?
Yep.
When you send this out, how many kids respond? Pretty much every one of them.
Yeah. And I will make the only thing I have to do is
Administrators love that, by the way.
I have to get them to stop blurting out answers. Because they're used to those 3 or 4 kids, they love their airtime. Okay? And I have to train them, no, your airtime's on the device. Stop, and no conversation, calculator. I'm going for national board this year. Anybody going for national board? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going for national board. Are you national board?
I'm going this year.
Oh, you are going? Why are you here? You should be writing.
I'm going for your written. I'm right number 4 later.
Hey, I'm finished with 4 and 1. Well, it's easy to do 4 when you're doing. But anyway, one of the things you have to do for national board is a group discussion video. And my group discussion video is Navigator, and we're doing this. So I'm either going to flunk national board because they're not going to get it and not like it, or they're going to understand what I'm trying to do, where getting every kid to discuss through the technology, and I'll pass. I'll let you know. But I'm betting my whole national board on this. Okay? I hope it works out too. But do you understand why I love this? Is because normally that is the same 2 or 3 kids that answer. And this way I can safely get every kid to put something down. And I also give them the option to say, I don't understand. When I ask them an open response question and they really don't understand, I don't want them to put some garbage down. I tell my kids, if you don't understand what's going on, you don't know the answer, I want you to type 911. If I'm going to force you to participate, I need you to also have the option to say, Mr. Bobby, I really don't understand. Help me. And that's okay. All right? And now if I look at them and I see that the same kid puts 911 for every question, then he and I need to talk. Or I'd rather them put 911 because at least I know they're awake and they're watching. And they don't. And then I will. If somebody puts 911 for 1 or 2 questions, the class discussions and I can go talk to that child. But if they put 911 for everyone, then I really need to go get that kid. Okay? But at least they're engaging. Every kid engaging on every question. Explanation is not graded. It's just as much text as they want. Text match can be graded, but it has to be an exact match with what I type as an answer. So if I ask them 2 lines in the same plane that do not intersect are called what? They have to type parallel and spell it right and to be graded. But I'm not a huge grade freak with this, okay?
And if you are trying to get your principal or administrator or district administration to buy in and provide some money, all you need to do is show this. That's how I got mine. It took less than 5 minutes for my administrator to say, okay, how much is it going to cost? Let's take care of it. I borrowed one to make that happen.
So could we do explanation first? Because I'm not going to take it for a grade. Okay? Let's try an explanation. And now we have a blank question. Now, of course, explanation means they've got access to the keyboard. Okay? So this is not one I break out in the first week or 2. Until I know my kids, until I've developed some trust and some respect, I'm going to hold off on this one. Okay? But you can type in, again, Jane's, the prepared, organized. Go ahead, no, put in a question you might ask as an explanation question. The scribe slope, okay? Now, what kind of answers would you want here? Rise over run, change in Y over change in X. You would, and you could go further with it, okay? So, and you might have, any number of questions there, okay? When you send it, the kids can type anything they want. Okay, and that's okay as long as you're down the line and you feel like you've got some trust. Now, what happens if a kid does do something inappropriate? You can see who did it, right? We've already established. You can see every result. Randy and I have talked this over a lot of times. We both had this happen to us on different occasions, and I won't actually say some of the things I've seen on my screen because I'm going to be on video, and I don't want to get yelled at. But they will. There are occasions where and I've only ever had one kid do it twice, because what happens is as soon as it happens, they get it off the screen. Because what does that kid want? Attention. So I get it off the screen and ignore it and go on to the next thing. You can just, because when you click on the review, go back over to the review. When you click on the results here, you see what happens, right? And it's going to appear on the screen. So when it appears on the screen, I either just go back to documents or go to the next question, or go to the question and get it off the screen, and then just go on to something else. And that kid's over there giggling. I already know who it is because he's over there giggling. And I ignore him, and everybody else is and I'm like, okay, let's go on to something else. And the rest of them are like, what happened? Why didn't we talk about that question? What's going on? And then we just go on to something else. And every time that happens, as soon as the bell rings, that kid's standing right there. And I save it in front of that child because you notice you can save the results. I save it in front of that kid and say, if it ever happens again, you and I are going to go have a conversation with Mr. Deadman. My former principal was named Deadman. Don't you love that? Okay? Now, he's not my principal anymore, but Deadman. I was like, yes. Okay? So anyway, so that was it. Okay? And I've only ever had one kid try me twice, and that boy was in ISS until I got tired. Okay? So, questions, open-ended. Let's go back to insert a new kind of question. Because those aren't my favorite one. My favorite question, mostest favoriteest question of all, is expression. And if you choose insert, what this does is it allows them to enter math expressions like fractions and square roots as an answer. Don't you need those sometimes? Okay? Radicals and logarithms and stuff. So you could have them combining like terms or distributing, through a set of parentheses or doing an integral or whatever you want. Oh my goodness. 7 less than the square root of y. Perfect. Ask that question to yourself or one of your own interest, whatever it is that you teach. So when you start that,
I need to stop a poll.
yeah, you have to stop the previous one. You always have to, the last one is open.
Okay.
Just I was looking for a mouse for her. All right, you're a student right now, so I'm going to help you. I'm going to do something as a teacher. You keep going. Don't worry about me. I'll talk about this tool here shortly. So Jane's answering the question. And you notice it allowed her to do square roots nicely and write equations. Where's your less than? Oh, you're going to clear? Go, just keep working. Keep working. Keep trying to answer the question.
No, that's the right answer.
Oh, you submitted it? Okay. And then,
Less than.
okay. So try answering on the other one. So when you go to answer on there, all the math symbols work nicely, like you're typing a mathematical operation. Okay? And so the expression one allows them to type in equations, okay? Go ahead and stop the presenter. I actually made use of something called screen capture, or class capture. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. So just X out of the upper right there for me. I wanted you to see what she was entering. And then when you go to the results, you can see the mathematical equations for the results of the students. Okay? And are any of those answers right? Which one? The second one. So if you want to grade these, you can actually grade them after the fact. You could put the answers in ahead of time. We'll talk about that shortly. You could put the answers in ahead of time, but oftentimes I don't want that there because I want to have a conversation about, are any of these answers right? Are any of these answers wrong? What? What's wrong? What's wrong with, what did that first person do incorrectly? What did they need to fix? What did they do right? What did they do? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. If you right-click on a right answer, or actually on any bar, you right-click on any bar, you have the option to mark that response correct. And if you have what you do for 2, you could do for 30. So you would go through and mark all the ones that are right, or have the kids tell you which ones are right and wrong. Right-click and then choose mark that correct, and it makes, you have to choose show correct answers up here at the top, yeah, there. And that turns the right answers green. So if you do actually mark answers right ahead of time, the bars will show up green. And when the bars show up green, that ends the conversation. Okay? So I either don't check that or don't mark answers ahead of time. Okay? So how do you mark answers?
How do you mark the answer ahead of time before?
Well, that's what we need to do. Exactly. We're going to go back. So how do we do that? That will go back to the where do we write questions, Jane?
Documents.
In the document tab. So this question needs an answer, right? Under the document toolbox, we're along the left-hand side. You see we're on the page sorter. There's a little hammer and wrench. Click on that little hammer and wrench. And that's the document tools for this particular question. And we can go in here and type in the acceptable expression. Okay? You have to do a square root. I think you have to click on that little book there to the right to get your math template. And then you can select your square root symbol. And then type in, so if you need math symbols, you've got to go in that little book to get them. Okay? Now what do you think this little checkbox under the acceptable response is? What does that do? If she did -7 plus root y, is that an acceptable answer? That is true, right? It may not be normal, but it's an equivalent acceptable answer. If you uncheck that box, they have to have the exact match for the expression. If you have that box checked, it will allow them to do algebraically equivalent responses. What if they did square root of x minus 3 minus 4? I don't know any of my kids that ever would do that, but they could. Okay? So when you're creating a question, the little document tools, the hammer and the wrench, are where you would go to change the question properties and to enter a response. Every question is going to have a different structure here based on the type of question. An ABCD question is going to have less there because you just got to check A, B, C, or D. One that is involving expression is going to have a little more complexity because this is a more complex question. Okay? So I'd like to enter a new question, probably my favorite question. Under expression, we're going to add another expression question. So insert that new expression question. And here is the drop-down box that says expression. Along the left-hand side, it says response type. You can change it from accepting algebraic expressions to just only accepting numbers. And it will allow, the only thing that they can type are using the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and the decimal point. If they try to type something naughty, it won't accept it. It only accepts numerical answers. So that pretty much, since I've discovered that within the last year, that pretty much takes all of the naughtiness out of the way. The worst thing they can do is write 666.
What about scientific notation?
I've never tried scientific notation. That's a good question. I would assume that would work because that's just a number. That's another one we might need to try. When you try that question, you can please ask yourself a number question and try, because I haven't tried that either. Okay. So now we've created a numerical response, and the numerical response, so if the answer is 32, I just type 32 there. Okay? So I could put, solve the what is the value of x for an equation? Or pizza's cut into, well, it depends on what size the pizza is. 12. Oh, you actually, I thought you were going the other way.
Uh-oh. Whoops.
Whoa, what did we do?
What did I do?
Oh, you clicked back on document 1 down here in the bottom. So click back to period 1. Now you're back. See, you can have multiple documents open, and that's actually, it's a good thing. That's just a basic navigator thing. You could have a graphing window up that you're working on, and then you could have a set of questions next to it, and then you could have your formative or summative assessment as well. You can have multiple documents open at once. Once you make your bank of questions, you save that as a file. That's what all those TNS files are on the website that TI has. They're just documents that people have created, and you can have multiple ones of them open. So what's the acceptable numerical response to this question? 12/7?
The reason I did that question was to see if they would accept mixed numbers as well as improper fractions.
That's a great question. We'll accept mixed numbers or improper fractions. It would be, the exact answer would be 12 divided by 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could enter a tolerance as well.
You just have to put in the mixed number, you just have to put
Yeah, you write it as, you could make it as 1 plus 5 divided by 12. But if you put 12/7 there and allow, you can even give yourself a little tolerance, all right? Oh, that's the response one. If you want to give them some wiggle room, like I teach AP Calculus, oftentimes when anybody else teach AP Calculus, they have all answers to 3 decimal places, but they usually give them a little wiggle room on the last decimal. They can be one or, whether they round or not. I will often make my answer accurate to 3 decimal plus or minus 1/1000th. Okay? So you could allow a tolerance if you wanted, but 12/7 will should accept equivalent numerical responses. Okay? Which you'd have to enter it as 1 plus 5/12. Okay? The reason I like numbers is that a lot of questions will just have a numerical response as well. Okay? So, yes?
What tolerance did you say you used for the AP? The exact answer?
1/1000th, so they could be off. But that actually gives them a little more wiggle room. They usually allow them to either round or, sometimes truncate. So, okay. So that's the numeric question. You also can, Do we want to have time to do a graph question? Let's insert one more question. And I'm going to skip the points and lists for the time being. Let's do f of x or y equals. And now you can ask them a question. One of the things I might do with this is write an equation for a parabola shifted up 2 units. Okay? Now I might quibble with Jane's wording.
You can't, you have to start with a basic function, don't you?
Write the equation, write an equation for a parabola shifted up 2 units. Yeah, I mean, oh, okay. Well, she wrote the equation. Is there only one equation? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I got to give her grief because Tracy's hiding in the back. And I could have started with a base function, but why did I? Because it could be. Oh. Yeah. Don't give me a hard time.
You got my back.
All right. But what am I looking for here? Maybe x squared plus 2, but could I get x minus 3, the quantity squared, plus 2? Okay. So, well, when I ask something like this, and you may be right, maybe I should be a little bit more specific, starting with x squared, give me whatever, but yeah. And, oh, you want to do that? Okay. Let's split the screen. Hey, Miss Smarty Pants. Let's split the screen. See up here where there's a little page up there to the right of insert? Page layout. Click the drop down under that. And let's split the screen into 2.
Hamburger or hot dog?
Let's do vertical split. Like that one, yeah. On the right side now, I've got a question on this side. And on this side, you want a visual? Let's put a visual. Click on that menu and add graphs. And we could put x squared there. So I actually, or I could have asked, so just put squared on there. Oh, caret 2.
Caret, okay.
Yeah, you can type it from the keyboard, sorry. So you can embellish your questions with graphs, or on that side I could put some notes or a picture or something. So I'm going to, so you can enhance your questions with the document stuff, okay? Yeah, so let's talk about, let's save this work because Jane's put some serious effort into this. Go back to the Documents tab. These questions we've been writing are all part of one document called Period 1 QP Set 1 March 8th. And I don't know what we got, 6, 7 questions here? Okay. So you can save that document. It's saved as a TNS file. For TI-Nspire. So when you go to File, Save, or click on the little floppy disk icon, don't you love that the 1990s floppy disk icon is still the icon for save? I was in a school this past summer, and there was a computer that still had 3.5-inch floppy drives in Arkansas, and I was doing workshop on computers that had those drives, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a good day. All right. So it went okay, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they even still exist. So they need to make it into a USB stick. Then the kids would know what it is. But all you have to do is choose Save As. And then you could save it to whatever location, a flash drive, desktop, My Documents, whatever makes you where you save your stuff, okay? If you're using somebody else's computer, what? Yeah, you can save it to my desktop or whatever. I don't care. But you would save it to a flash drive or save it to the desktop for now, just for simplicity's sake. And here's where you might want to change the name. I would probably call it, I tend to do it by the unit that I'm in. If I'm in section 3.2, I'll call it section 3.2 quick polls. Okay? So that next year, I'll have those questions that I don't have to rewrite. Okay? Most awesome session at the conference. Yay! All right? And it's saved. And if you add to it later, you can, and you can email it and share it and all that good stuff. I feel like Tracy.
Can you open up and see who answered what questions right now? That's
Well, that's saving just the questions. When we go over to the review, we would save the answers. There's two different results. There's the questions, the documents that we authored, and then the results under review. And when you're in review, if you click on the little floppy disk drive, it's going to save the results to the portfolio. Right there, save, under review, when you choose save, it's going to put a column in the portfolio for that class, and then you can go back to those results at any time. So if you save at the end of your session, if you do 10 quick polls in a class period, you don't have time to go through and analyze those in the 5 minutes you have in the changeover, right? So you save it to the portfolio, and then you can go in and analyze it after the fact in the portfolio. In the portfolio, you can see what happened, and if you go to along here, you can get a breakdown of every child for every question. Now, in a classroom scenario, you would have 30 students. Here today, you only have 2. Okay? So that's how it goes with Quick Poll.
And if you noticed in those results, go back to click on the most awesome session. And some of those results are just 0, 0. That's because there's no way to score that kind of question.
And we were doing open response questions.
Okay. So it
or
just
we
says
didn't
there-
mark answers.
Yeah, or that's right. Or you didn't identify what the correct answer was.
Remember I showed you how to mark an answer correct? You have to do that on the fly or do it in advance if you want it to be analyzed.
Which is what she did for the question 3. And Jonathan got it right. That's 1.0. 1 means right, 0 means wrong. Okay.
Yes.
If you wanted to share whether it can be sent or can it be shared?
If you can, yeah, just like you can email it, you can put it to Dropbox, you can.
They have to have that software to be able to open.
Well, to make use of it, they could open it in the Navigator or in Inspire Teacher Edition. You can open a question document in without Navigator, but if you want to actually send it and use it and receive it, and they'd have to have the Navigator software.
Assuming you wanted to send it one at a time, okay, with the quick pull. And that's different from sending a document. If you just had the Teacher Edition software and you had a way to connect to all of your handhelds, you
With
could,
cables and stuff.
with cables and or the charging bays, which will daisy link together or daisy chain together, you can then send them all out that way.
But I typically, you would, if you want to do these quick pull back and forth things, you do have to have Navigator. But you can't, like you said, you can do a whole and we're about to do a whole bunch of questions at once. But I do want to talk about the graph equation because I don't know if you got a chance to actually send the graph, the y equals equation to yourself, respond and examine the results. Those are actually pretty cool. So we were authoring an f of x equals question before the break, weren't we? Did you have that question finished? Okay, so let's go back to that question and let's send it to ourselves as a quick poll and respond. So go back to the question.
But I'm just trying, because I sent the graph question.
Have you answered it?
I did.
Go to review, because remember you want to, portfolio lets you see all, go back to review. Okay. And so no, you're fine. You got it. You're good. Would you answer on the other calculator, but answer Right, answer one right, answer one wrong.
Okay. So what her question was is she had sent the poll out, but it didn't show up in the portfolio when she saved it.
Oh, because it hasn't stopped it.
It hadn't stopped yet. It was still an active poll.
Yeah,
So it didn't save it.
She's
Or
going
didn't
to
save
have
it.
to save it again after she finishes. I don't save until the end of the session. Okay? You can, but you're just gonna save and append your earlier list. So she's got one right response and one incorrect response. Okay? So we can examine we see the question, we can see the results, but if you notice in the very bottom right corner, you see it in the bottom right corner, we're on like the bar chart icon. If you click on those different icons down there, you can see their results graphically and in a table. Okay? If you go back to the graph one, you can actually differentiate the colors of those, differentiate student responses, and you can still mark those right. We could right-click on them, mark them correct. That student data. And then back, if you would go to the toolbox that we went to, oh yeah, you can mark that. Oh, right-click, individualized student cursor. Individualized student cursor. You can't mark it right? I thought you could mark those right. She just right-clicked on the graph and chose individualized student cursor. I guess I was wrong. I thought you could mark one right, but I guess you're wrong. I guess I was wrong.
If you do it on the first tab, I did it.
You marked the answer right? On the first tab. Okay.
Mark it on the first tab and it'll show on the
Oh, the bar chart. Okay, I thought you could mark them right. That one you can. That's where you can mark it correct. Thank you. And the green one shows up as the right answer. Okay? Oh, it's like Parabola Christmas. But the parabolas will be opening downward, wouldn't they?
Yeah. When I first was shown all this stuff, it was one of these kind of things where, oh, you can do this, and we kind of played a little bit with that, and I thought, when that person left and I was by myself, I went, okay, I know I can do this. I did it once. Where is it? And just knowing it's there gives you that, okay, I can find it because I only pushed a few different places. Okay, so just know that when you do start doing that, it comes and eventually you get really quick at this because you do it enough. All right, so just don't get overly frustrated. It's like, I know I can do that, but I just don't remember. So just don't give up too easily, okay?
Okay, so how are you feeling about quick poll? Feel okay with quick poll? The only difference between quick poll and a test, sending a test for a grade, is that you're going to send all the questions as one document at one time. That's using a document model. If you want to just back and forth popping off questions, you want quick poll. But if you want to do a more in-depth, summative type assessment or, a 5-question bell ringer, you're going to send the entire document and they're going to work through all of them at one time. So from the Documents tab, we have that document now that has 7 questions. And that's not perfect. It's maybe not all the questions that she wants in the way she wants it, but let's just pretend that it is. If I want to send it, and this is what we talked about, or some of us pointed out earlier, or what I think, Jane, you actually said this earlier, you thought it was the send to class icon. The difference between start poll is going to start the active question, the one you have highlighted. Send to class is going to send the whole file, all 7 questions at once. And the kids can work on them at their own pace. So if you choose send to class now, you can send it to everyone, including yourself, or only the logged in people. Okay? Now, if you choose logged in only and the next day a kid comes in, he doesn't have to make up work. But if you choose everybody, you can catch the kids that you miss the day before, or that day. They can come back the next day and make up any missed work if you want. So even if you send it to them, even if they're not there, it'll say 23 of 25 have completed the assignment. When those 2 come back, they can log in and complete their work when they return, if you want to do that. Now, oftentimes, how much of this are you going to take through a grade? I'm not going to do my final exam through Navigator. I could do a part of it, but I'm not going to do my entire calculus final exam through Navigator. I might do periodic homework quizzes through it, but not wholesale, because I want to see some of their work, right? So that's up to you. Once you hit finish, it goes. All logged in handhelds will get it, but I will actually send it before they even come in the door. So I will oftentimes send my bell ringer questions. I'll start the class, open my file, start my class, send my file, and then as they log in, they get the file. As soon as they log in, they'll get it, and they can start to work. And when I do that, oftentimes, like if I have a bell ringer that's 5 questions, they might have 5 minutes from the time the bell rings to do their 5 questions. But if they come to class 2 minutes early, because their class was just across the hall, and if they didn't go out in the hall mingling with their friends, they could come and have 7 minutes to do their bell ringer. And it works. And they're seated when the bell rings, and it's quiet, and I can take attendance. And so, anyway, just think about it. All right, so what happened on the handhelds? You've got a pop-up that says, all files have been transferred. Open, go to, or cancel. Now, or close. What kids do when they see a pop-up is close, right? I have to tell them that when Mr. Bobby pops up on your calculator, I'm usually wanting you to open what I'm doing. Don't ignore my pop-ups. Yay, I pop up in their lives. Okay? Now if I could just pop up on their phone no, I don't want to do that. Okay? But if I pop up on your calculator, you don't ignore me. Okay? Do not ignore Mr. Bobby pop-ups. And so they can now open the questions, and I love it because they don't have to go, they just go in and they start working. Okay? How do you go to the next question? Because some of you may not be Nspire aficionados. Control, right arrow to advance. How do you back up if you go too far? Control left arrow lets you retreat. So now the students would go in and respond to their 7 questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you, we were making questions, and I noticed it went 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, and then it went to 2.1.
Oh, okay. Did it?
In ours.
On yours did? Okay, well, when you got the 1 point and the 2 point, actually, I'll let you explain that, Rick. You do a lot. I guess you don't. Do you do a lot of the authoring? Do you do some? In the Nspire, when you're creating a document, within all problems that begin with 1, all the this is really for about like defining variables, and like if you define the function f of x or f1 of x, f1 of x is known on every page. It starts with a 1. Okay? So I could define f1 of x, I could graph x squared on page 1. And then on page 2, I could do a function evaluation, or I could do f1 of 2. And it would know what f1 of x is from the previous page, because it's defined there. And every page that starts with 1 is going to know the same thing. If you want to start over with a clean slate of variables, you go to Insert Problem. And that changes it to 2.1. And once you get to 2.1, in problem 2, everything that starts with 2, there's no variable definition. So you could redefine f1 of x. Okay? Now that's not necessary to do on questions very often. Okay? I don't think we did a problem yet, but I think maybe some of y'all did. I think that might be my first time I dropped y'all. Is it?
It might have added a problem instead of add a question.
Yeah.
And then went to it, yeah. I think it is.
How do I now send it if I add this or else?
The kids can send it in, but typically I don't send it in. I don't have them send it in, I collect it from them. Now you can have the kids turn it in, but if I'm doing a bell ringer at 5 minutes, I just yank it off their device, which is what we're about to do. Jane, are you ready to collect? Yes. Are y'all ready to collect 5 or 7 or whatever many questions? Okay. So if I've sent something to the class, how do I collect something from the class? Go to class. Thank you. I thought it was pretty obvious there. Go to the class tab. Go to class. Do you notice in the class record, there is a most awesome session in the world thing with the arrow pointing down and to the left. There, down and to the right. I told you I don't know my left from my right. Down and to the right. I guess I kind of like this because it has this idea, the arrow going down, I'm sending something to the kid, and the arrow coming up means it's going to the teacher. So it means I'm high and exalted. Okay? So this file was sent to the kids. If I go there to collect from class, that I'm going to suck out their brains, because the arrow is literally coming out of the icon's head. You click on that collect from class icon, and this will have the files you most recently sent. You actually can go back through history and browse if you need to, but if you will click on the file you just sent and choose next, I'm about to collect that file from everybody. And one thing that's a really important checkbox is right here. Delete from handheld after collecting. What happened is I put a quiz on your calculators, on my students' calculators. The kids in first period answered it. And then the kids from second period are going to come in and not go into the second period folder. They're going to go into the first period folder and look at the file from first period and get all the answers, and guess what? The grade's going to be great by the end of the day. Okay? If I leave that file on the handheld, there is no way to keep, first of all, I'm going to be using a memory that I don't need anymore, and in terms of test security, I want to take that off. So if I choose delete, it's going to take the file off the calculator and grade it. So the blue arrow means I've pulled it back off. The red X means it's gone from the handheld, and now I'm ready to grade it. If you right-click on the blue collection, you can open it in the review workspace and examine the results. Just like we did with the quick polls, but now we have all 5 or 7 or whatever in one bundle. If you notice, she still has her quick poll session down here, and she's got now her group quiz as another. Okay?
I like to use this part the most when I'm doing this type, or sending out questions, because I'll do this for review. And I'll give the kids a review assignment the night before, and then I send them a document with however many questions there were, and I give them a couple minutes, give me all your answers. And then we go through and review it. And I can do, it's graded real quick. We can take a look and see what they got and what they didn't get. If most of the students have it right, if they're one of the answers that didn't get it, there's only a couple of them there, I'm going to say, you guys need to talk to me, figure this out before we take the test. If it's the other way around, it's right there, it's a teaching moment. Okay, something happened, you guys don't have this figured out. Let's go over it right now, let's figure it out. And then move our way through that. And that really leads that review. We don't spend time reviewing stuff that really is only for one person in the class who didn't know how to do it, who's very boisterous. Okay? And it puts it onto them. They've got to go out of their way to come back and figure it out, since they're the only ones that really don't know it.
And there's a big art to deciding what to do and not do based on the results. But once you get 30 on the screen, you'll start to see patterns. And I love the what did this person do wrong, or how did this person get this answer?
I'll always use it, I just started out with this one that I have made up, the option so you can.
Do multiple responses, yeah.
Responses if you want.
Should we look at that? Do we need to, are you,
It's a great thing for.
are you curious about doing what she said? You've done it? Okay. When you're under the tools, you can go into the side and allow multiple answers rather than a unique one answer. Okay. So now I could save this to the portfolio as well. So you could save individual quick polls as a bundle or an entire document as one activity to the portfolio. Whenever you save, it's saved to that portfolio, which is like your grade book. Okay? All right, now I used screen capture earlier, and I want to do, I should have done it before I did the questioning because they're probably both looking at me like, there's the two big tools that we use all the time, and they could be in either order, the screen capture or the class capture, Tracy, I'm sorry, and the questioning. There's two main things, and I decided to do questioning first, but screen capture is actually the easiest, okay? You almost don't need any real, you don't need technical things to do that, okay? I would like to go back to class, the class tab. Okay, so the the class capture icon, the ability to see what's going on all the screens, is the icon that looks like a camera. So if you click on that, you have the option to do class capture. This is actually probably the simplest tool of all of them. But it's, in some ways, it's one of the most robust. Class capture is going to take a snapshot of everything that's on all of the students' calculators at one time. On all y'all's calculators. You know the difference between y'all and all y'all? All y'all's the plural, y'all's the singular, okay? If you're a Yankee, I'm an ex-Yankee, but I'm still a Yankee, even though I've been in Arkansas for 16 years. I know, my 16th year in Arkansas from Pittsburgh, and I'm like some weird homeless person because I'll never be a Southerner, but I don't really fit up here anymore. You could take a snapshot of one individual, and sometimes I actually will do that of myself, but I'll tell you why here later. But choose logged in only. Most of the time, 95% of the time or higher, I choose logged in only because I only want to examine the screens of the students who are with me right now. If I choose everybody, the ones who are not in class that day are going to still be there, but it's just going to have this little box that says not logged in. And I don't want to have that headache. So if you just choose logged in only, you're only going to get the calculators of the students who are with you that day. So hit OK, or that are logged in that day. Now, you're only going to get 2 screens. And if you want to put 3 or 4 on there, you could actually get more calculators and more cables. But that, what you do for 2 is what you're going to do for 32. So you have some options here. You can enlarge them or shrink them with the magnifying glasses. And you can refresh them by hitting the little refresh arrow to see if there's an update. Like Randy's going to take one and start doing something. Okay, so Randy's done some things, and when she refreshes, she's going to get what he's done. This is a static snapshot at that moment of time. It's not live. Okay? But you can make it live. Click on one of the screens, and do you notice the option for Make Presenter becomes active? So once you select the screen, click Make Presenter, and then grab that calculator and drive. Where's my ooh? You don't understand how big this is. Sarcastic oohs are still accepted. All right. This is how I teach.
How are you getting it to?
So, can I have this calculator? Has anybody besides me ever taught with the overhead pan? Do you know what an overhead projector is? Okay? And they're those little panels that you like put on them, and then the light would shine through it, and they'd see what's on your screen. Boy, that seems like forever ago. You know how you cannot find there's one overhead projector at Lakeside High School. There's one overhead projector in my entire high school, and that's because that's the guy who is like 2 years from retirement. He's a history teacher, and he refuses to let them give him a smartboard. All right? And as soon as he retires, I'm taking that to the trash. Okay? We don't have overhead projectors anymore. Okay? Because at least my school, you couldn't find one if you wanted. I'd love to go to an antique store and get one just to have one, But no, I was kidding, okay? But you don't use that. But you need a way for the kids to see on your calculator. But the problem with the smartboard is I'm a big boy, okay? I like my Philly cheesesteak, and when I'm here, you can't see the screen very well, okay? So when I'm on my smartboard, I'm doing this all the time. When I'm live presenter, and this is actually wireless, it actually is normally wireless when we get to the classroom setup, I'm just doing my graphing and giving my instructions while I'm in among you. The problem with the overhead panel is I was tethered to a 6-foot radius, or I always had a kid drive. I actually never drove the overhead. I always had a kid drive the overhead. But now I can drive where I can make a kid present and have them be doing the things on the overhead. Okay? I actually, do a lot of my workshops this way and do a lot of stuff in my classroom this way, where I'm the presenter through the Navigator.
Once you do that, how do you go back to the screen?
You stop presenter. You release that person, and then you could grab the next person. So what I'll do is, if I find a kid who's sleeping, or a kid who's got something interesting on his calculator, I'll let him share, and then I'll go over to her and have her share out. Okay? Seniors do not want to come up to the board, but they'll do something on their calculator in their seat. My kid, I cannot get very rarely can I get my kid, they just don't want to. They're too cool for that. But my seniors will do this. Okay? So, the other option is auto refresh. Do you see in the upper right? Every minute, every 30 seconds, it's going to automatically refresh for me. So sometimes my kids will be working on something, and I'll be circulating the room, and I'll have this updating while I'm moving around, catching on. I'm helping you, and then I'll just take a quick glance, see if somebody's okay. If everybody else is okay, then I'll go over here, and everybody's still sharing out, but it's still running. It's just automatically every 30 seconds, every 2 minutes, whatever, refreshes the screens. Okay? Now, I know that some of you might be thinking. Not everybody, because this is what I thought first time I saw it. I can finally catch them doing something. I can watch them and find out if they're not doing what I asked them to do. Y'all probably thinking the same. Some of y'all might be thinking the same thing. Okay? I want to kind of discourage you from that thought process. Again, I think you're picking up that I try to be real sensitive to struggling students. And you can be big brother with this, but the more big brother I want to be, the more they're going to fight me. Okay? So I try to use this as an assessment tool as well. And one of the things I'll do is use this as a quicker way, an easy way of doing a graphical quick poll. I could ask them to, okay, I want you to graph a line with a negative slope. Everybody graph a line with a negative slope. And now remember, you'd have 30 screens. What's going to happen? Now, again, this is maybe not what I would teach a calculus class, but imagine I could adapt your question for whatever level. Refresh, then I refresh the screens. Okay? So what other kinds of questions what patterns do we notice here? What would happen? Where could I go from here? What's wrong with those two lines? Do they have anything in common? Do they have anything different about those two lines? Okay? Make another line with another negative slope on yours. Make a line with a y-intercept of 2. Make a horizontal line. Make a vertical line. But you could assess to see if they could do it, but then also I could say, okay, now make a line with a steeper negative slope. Okay? And I could springboard off of this for one question, several different activities. Okay? Depending on whatever it is you're teaching.
Transformations of functions.
This is
Have them all up. It's great. Graph one. Now let's translate it to the left. Let's translate it to the right. And they can see. And their names aren't there, so it's anonymous.
You can show the names.
Right.
Okay? But that's where we'd put the note card over our projector or usually. If there's a right-wrong scenario, I don't do the names publicly. And there are people who feel that you should. I am on the camp that you should not.
Right. And I don't either.
Okay? But I do think that you should, and so when it's updating every 30 seconds, I want to point out one other feature. When it refreshes, the previous ones are gone, right? If I want to keep these for analyzing later, you can click Add to Stack. Anytime there's something interesting going on, you can capture all of the screens. It's going to capture the whole bundle of screens and add it to a stack of images. And so you could do that 3, 4, 5, 100 times in a class period and get all of those screens and analyze them later on. No, I don't do that very much, okay? You can, though, because at the end of the session, you could save all those screens and go back and analyze them. Yes? You would have to save that one screen. You wouldn't be able to add just one student.
If you
click the screen,
you click just that one, and then
just that one, you can save that one screen.
And basically, it saves all of them to essentially a clipboard, and then you'd go in and open up your Word document, and then copy it and paste it into Word, and it would have that student's name, I think, attached to it, or you could have it show the student's
name. But if you click on one screen, you have the option of saving that one screen. But having a stack of all of them, if you have one student who's consistently off task and everybody else is doing it, having that one that's off task when all the others are doing work is actually a more powerful visual, right? So I would have that one. I'd actually just keep the stack, and then I'd call that kid up and say, hey, let's look through your performance today. Well, look, you didn't do anything all day. Let's not let that happen again.
But if you're on auto refresh, once you refresh it, it's gone unless you click that. So that's where you got to kind of think about, is this something where I might have an issue where I need to save those? Then you manually refresh it.
But
but
if you
I'm in
do have
discussion-
like an inappropriate comment here, you can save one individual screen. And that, but you can still get it by the stack is the easiest way to capture them all at once, and then you could pull that one out later if you wanted. But you do have options either way. Okay? Did we miss anything about the screen capture? Is there anything else that... Oh, you can rearrange them. That's right. You can... Now, it's hard to do with 2, but if you have 30 screens, you can put them in... Like, if somebody's doing something interesting and you want to focus on that one screen, you could drag it to the top left is like the big dog that when you zoom in, it's going to zoom in on the one that was in the top left. If you drag it to that location, you can zoom in on it and then discuss it. Okay? The other thing that happens, if you double click on a screen, you will get a view. There's 2 views for screens. There was the tiled view where you see them all in arrangements here, and then there's like a page sorter view where you could see one of them enlarged. But if you have 30, there'd be a scroll bar here of 30 screens. In the upper right view, tiled. Tiled is like a bunch of screens running across like icons, I guess. And then gallery is like I think of as page sorter view. Okay? I tend to not, but sometimes, and that's what happened to you, Sarah, earlier on. You were in gallery view, because the last thing I'd done on mine was in gallery view. Okay? Very, very powerful tool. This is, I use a lot. A lot.
Plus, what sometimes I'll do is if I've got them working on an activity, I don't necessarily have it showing up on my screen, but I've got it on my computer. I might have a set of directions or something on my screen, then I freeze it or whatever, and then I've got this going on my computer screen, and I can see where they are in the process of the activity. Not that I'm being Big Brother, but I know where they are. And then I can make adjustments, or I can say, oh, someone's bogging down a little bit, they're a few pages behind. I can just wander over that way. As I'm walking around the room, sometimes it's hard to tell, but as I walk around, I come by my desk, I take a quick look at my desk, okay, and then I move on. And I know who I need to check up on. That's a quick check there, too.
So, I think we hit the big highlights that we were after. The quick poll, the assessment of a document, and the screen capture. There are some more advanced features, like with certain types of questions, you can actually aggregate data and do some other, stuff that are down the line. But the real beginning starting points that you want to go with your navigator, get the thing set up. Start with screen capture and quick poll. Just do those, live in the world of screen capture and quick poll. This is my advice if you're going to be getting started on your navigator journey, is start with those 2 things, just quick poll and screen capture, quick poll and screen capture. And don't worry about saving and making it, but just use it with kids and watch the engagement go up. Watch them respond and see how excited they get. My kids get excited when they're using Navigator. When the days that I don't plan on using it, if we're doing something that's pen and paper, they're like, oh, can we do it on the calculator? Okay? And so I think and then if you are going to go back now, you have, 3 months left? 2.5 months left? 2.5 months is a nice little time to play with it. Okay, and get those 2 things under wrap. And then you can move on to some of the more advanced, like making documents and sending bunches of quizzes, and then go to some more training and learn how to do some of the more advanced features. In 3 hours, we've taken you as far as I think I can take you without, especially since it's almost 5 o'clock and y'all are See, I told you I was some weird hybrid lost in space. All y'all are a little tired. I can tell it's past our bedtime because normally we're used to being done at 3 or 3:30. And that's why these conferences are so hard. But they're so exciting. I hope that you feel like you can do this, okay? Or at least that you can start trying. You are not going to be able to remember everything. You might forget something. You might have a question. If you have a problem or a question, our emails are up here. That's tracymath@yahoo.com. She'd be the one to contact first, and then that's Randy. She'd be the one to contact. You can email any one of us or all three of us. I'm Cory, Tricky Bobby, and our emails are on here. And I assume you'll probably, if you want to attach the handout or if you want to attach our emails to the video, I'm sure they'll have those made available along with the video. So please, I hope that you have a great rest of your day, or rest of your conference, and don't get too crazy out there in Philly tonight. Be careful in the snow.